It's easy to hear your favorite artist on WFPK from wherever you are. Listen on your smart speaker, live stream from our website at WFPK.org from Louisville Public Media.
There's a lot of things to consider. Let's do it.
Consequence Podcast Network. Welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always, making your way here, checking out the series. I always so appreciate it. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, that always does a world of good for us over here too. Put out 3 new interviews every single week. New one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so it is a great way to keep up with all of your favorite artists, discover some new ones, know what's happening in the music world. iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Acast, Podchaser, NPR, YouTube for the video versions, or anywhere you get your podcast from. Subscribe to Kyle Meredith with. And I'm Kyle Meredith. Today, I'm going to be talking with Eels. In fact, frontman E, we're going to be catching up about his new album, Extreme Witchcraft, an album that arrives just over a year from 2020's Earth to Dora. The indie rock legend going to tell us about working with John Parish for the first time since 2001's Souljacker, how this new album came to be looked at as a continuation of that record, taking some inspiration from some 70s soul on a few of the tracks, and the lyrics looking at mortality, aging, and how we consider ourselves. Now, he's also going to look back to the early 2000s as we remember fan reactions to his musical turn during Souljacker. Then we'll back it up to 1991, the 30th anniversary of his major label debut, A Man Called E. Back even before the Eels moniker had taken effect, back when he was just called E. He tells us about getting signed before he had ever performed live, and being the opener for Tori Amos that year. So let's get into it, shall we? Extreme Witchcraft is the new album. It's Kyle Meredith with Eels.
Hello.
I always got to say this. You're one of my all-time favorite songwriters and musicians, and Extreme Witchcraft is so good. And I would probably start every interview that I would ever do with you with that line right there, because I mean it every time. But man, I love this record. Congratulations again on it.
Wow, thanks, man. Well, that's why I keep coming back.
That's just that. Wait.
Yeah, just for that part.
Okay.
Thanks. This is great. Bye.
If only they were that easy. If only they were that easy. You frequently throughout the years have done quick records, quick follow-ups, however you want to say that. And Earth to Dora was just last year. But because the timing, I wondered, does this one followed up so quickly just because you weren't able to tour that record? Is that part of how we get this within a year of that one?
Yeah, I'm sure that has something to do with it. What else are you going to do?
Are you the kind of person who needs to be busy? I mean, was there just like or could you have just turned off and not done a record?
Yeah, I wasn't actually looking to make a record when it suddenly just sort of organically happened. I didn't, because I felt like, it hasn't been that long since the last one. So it wasn't on my mind. And then out of the blue, one night I got a text from Mark Romanek, who had directed the very first Eels video all those years ago, and I hadn't heard from him in many years, and he just wanted to tell me that he'd been listening to the Souljacker album a lot lately. And that just got me thinking about John Parish, who I made most of the Souljacker album with, and I just thought, maybe I should see what he's up to, and if he's interested in seeing what we might make now. And it just turned out to be good timing. He happened to be in between a couple of projects, and he immediately started sending me stuff, and it just began a rapid fire back and forth. And then a few weeks later, we had an album.
What you all did on that record, of course, as far as I'm concerned anyway, is absolutely classic. What's the recipe that you all make together? What how do you see it, when you put together what comes out? What's the strength of your partnership, you and Parish?
Well, the fun thing about collaborating with anyone is getting things out of someone that you wouldn't get out of yourself. There's no point in working with someone that's just going to do what you would do anyway. So, and John Parish, when I work with him, he just has such a unique sonic palette. I don't know anyone else that sounds like him. And so it's, you know, it's just fun to get to mix it up and put your contributions in with that.
Do you find that on this record that it changed, like what changed for you in the way you wrote a song, if anything?
Well, the biggest difference was it was all pandemic recording between Bristol, England, where he is, and Los Angeles, where I am. And actually, that's how the Souljacker album started, whenever that was, 20 years ago or whatever. And that started with him sending me some stuff over from England, and then I had to it here in Los Angeles. But then he flew over, and we did most of the record in the same room in my studio after that. So this one was all done that way because of the pandemic, of course. And it's a very different way of working, and it's probably not as fun as being in the same room. And it also, you know, it can be frustrating at times because stuff that's really easy and only takes a minute to do when you're in the same room, sometimes you have to wait a whole day, you know, particularly with the time difference between England and California. So I find myself, you know, waking up at 4 a.m. to check the latest version from John and then try to get back whatever I was adding to it, you know, before his day was over.
I mean, there's a lot of instances of rock and roll, you know, doing big things at 4 a.m, but it's usually when you've stayed awake that long, not when you woke up at that point.
Yeah, I'm such a sorry excuse of a rock and roller. That's when I wake up, not when I go to bed.
You know, for what it's worth, though, so if it felt disjointed, it's definitely, I can't tell when I listen to it. I mean, there are several different sides of this record as far as the feeling goes. I mean, on one side, the riffs are monstrous. I love them. It's a great riffs album. You're doing it all over the place. And I don't know, like, I'll just concentrate there for a second. For you, you know, a lot of attention does get paid on the lyrics, and for good reason. They're fun and they're interesting, but those riffs are always so catchy in themselves. How do you approach those? Is it just kind of one of those messing around on the couch sort of a things, or is it more meticulous?
Well, most of the riffs are courtesy of John Parish, and a few of them are from Cool G Murder. And the way most of the songs were done with John was he would send me kind of jams he was doing that weren't structured like a song. You know, it'd be like a feel, and it would have, you know, probably a lot of the instruments that would end up on the final thing, but it was all just kind of a formless jam. So when he sent me one that I responded to and that excited me, then I would start to put it into more of a song format, or at least in my mind, a song format. So I would say, you know, let this part go on twice as long, cut this part in half, cut this part out completely, mute everything here, take this instrument off for this part, add something on this part, that kind of thing. And then once I got it into a form that felt more like something that could have singing to it, then I would write up the melody and the lyrics with it.
Well, I said, and just the feels, the other side of that, and it sounds like maybe I'm guessing probably came around the same way, like Grandfather Clock, probably my favorite song on the record. The groove of that, like, and that's the other side, when maybe there's not, you know, as prominent of a riff per se, you still get these songs that have these, you know, great grooves to it. Like the feel of So Anyway, which is, you know, more of a slower song, but it's got that, I don't know, sounds like, it reminds me a little bit. Do you remember the TLC song Digging on You by chance?
I remember the title, but I can't remember the song.
Whatever that sound is going on in So Anyway, that, you know, whatever, like it's so similar to that. And
well, that's a pretty unique John Parish song, I think, in his catalog, in that it doesn't have the riffs or the, you know,
mm-hmm.
the fuzzy garage rock side to it, but it is, in my mind, what I wanted it to be, because it was so pretty. I wanted to write like a really just straightforward melody and lyrics that could have been sung by like a classic 70s soul act, you know, like Gladys Knight or something. But it's what set it apart was that it's that kind of song, but it's completely in the trashy, fucked up John Parish world.
You know what's a little bit interesting of that is, as I was referencing TLC, when they wrote those songs for Crazy Sexy Cool in the 90s, they were also looking at 70s soul, a la Gladys Knight and stuff like that. So that's
always a good place to look.
Yeah, it's interesting, just meeting point, I guess. So then on the lyrics, what you're talking about, you know, where you really shine here and step in, I sometimes, and I've always had this, have a hard time knowing exactly where your character ends up in a song. Like, even when it sounds like it's going okay, maybe it's not, or when it's not going okay, maybe it is. I'll just broadly ask, how's this guy doing? How's the Extreme Witchcraft dude doing on this album?
I mean, I'm not sure if there's one dude, you know. I think that it's, you know, some songs are pretty autobiographical and some aren't at all, and some are a mix. And I think that's been true of every album. So I you know, for me, it's just song by song. I don't think I could generalize a character through the whole album if he's okay or not. You know, it ends with him being remorseful for being an idiot.
So, at least he's remorseful for being an idiot.
Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully he'll bounce back from that. We'll see.
Is Steam Engine about humanity's demise?
Well, to me, it was one of those things where I wasn't conscious of what it was about. It just kind of came out. And then, but when I look back on it, I think what was inspiring me was my own demise, really, or just everyone's demise, not humanity's per se, but an individual's getting older. And, you know, that there's that thing that you hear occasionally about, you know, older people, you know, like you see an old lady walking down the street and you think there's an old lady, but she probably doesn't feel like an old lady inside. She feels very similar to, you know, the young lady she once was. And you know, I can recognize that in myself, that I'm getting older, but I don't feel that different, you know, and I still feel quite vibrant. And so I guess it's sort of about mortality or that kind of thing.
I think I can handle that better than all of humanity's demise. Like, whatever you just said actually sounded more hopeful in a weird way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's not about the end of the world. It's about the end of your world.
Right. It's so interesting you said that. I hit a milestone this year. I mean, I just hit 40, and I know you're on the way to 60. I lived with my great grandmother for a little while, and she was in her 80s, and I remember her telling me exactly that she didn't feel any different than like her 30s or something like that.
Yeah, and it's hard for us to imagine that because everybody looks so old, and you just think like, oh, they're thinking, you know, and the way they're being and everything is old too, but that might not be the case for them.
It's also one of those interesting moments as a songwriter. And again, you've got decades of experience with this, but Steam Engine talking about, you know, like at first listen, it almost sounds like this is something that, you know, just that you're, what do you call it? Stream of consciousness, you know, that it's not meticulously written out or something like that. But at some point with this song, with all of your songs, and probably because of moments like this when you're in interviews, that it does have to play out into something. Is that like, does the song have to be about something?
No, I don't think anything. I don't think you have to be conscious of what it's about. And I love that songs can be interpreted differently by each listener, you know.
Well, on the lighter side of things, what's the appeal of strawberries and popcorn? Is that really a thing for you?
Well, it was really a thing one evening. It was inspired by a very different situation than is portrayed in the song. You know, I'm father of a now 4-year-old, and often my own meals consist of whatever he left over from his eating meals and snacks during the day. And one evening I realized I hadn't had anything to eat in a while and I should have something for dinner. And I just didn't feel like cooking anything, and I saw his half-eaten strawberries and popcorn from earlier, and I just thought, oh, fuck it, I'm just gonna eat that for dinner. I have to say, I really enjoyed it, by the way. It was a good combination. And then it just led to me cooking up a different scenario for for the song, where it's about someone who finds themselves in a new situation where they're alone and they can call all their own shots, and fuck it, I'm going to eat strawberries and popcorn for dinner if I want to.
Like, I understand sweet and salty. That's obviously just not two of the things that I would have expected.
Yeah, I think people should try it.
All right, there it is.
Yeah.
From the mouth of the man himself. So we talked about this a little bit. I did want to hit on it here too a little bit, because Souljacker, it's just like, it just sounds like it's coincidental that it just happens at the 20th anniversary. And I personally, I do love the big round anniversaries, like looking at it and putting it in that scope and everything. The titles of the two albums, Souljacker, Extreme Witchcraft, if you want to, they kind of play together very nicely. And I'm asking through that lens this question. Did this album speak specifically to that one in any sort of way, sequel-esque, or just?
Yeah, they are both. They are kind of spooky titles, both of them. You're right. Yeah, it's a total coincidence that it just happened to be 20 years. I wasn't aware of that. And, I don't think this one is a sequel per se, but it's maybe a continuation in some of the sound influences, maybe, or whatever.
It's fun to go back and I of course I listened to that one again as I was thinking about this new record, reading up a little bit about it, some of the history, whether the wiki stuff is true about the label telling you there was a lack of radio friendly singles. It's sort of mind blowing, because
that was all true.
Yeah, because I guess that eventually means this is an album that succeeded despite the record company.
It was like, I think a lot of my albums at the time that it came out, it was, at the time too, it was the fourth Eels album, I think. And it was quite a jarring left turn from the previous albums. So I think, a lot of people didn't know what to make of it at first, because it was just like, wait, this is the Eels, And then, it didn't do very well commercially, which, of course I'm used to. I was like, whatever. But also, like, some of our albums that, over the years, that's the real test, is like it took on a life. And, I think a lot of people really like that album.
I mean, there are just songs on there like I can't imagine us not having. Some of the bigger ones, especially when we look at Fresh Feeling. I mean, what a classic. That's Not Really Funny is so great. I was listening to the bonus songs on there. I write the B-sides and hidden track, and just thinking about it, even how sort of meta genius that was, having those two things that we don't even really have these days by title anymore. B-sides and hidden tracks, by the way.
Oh yeah, good point. No wonder it was 20 years ago.
No wonder it was 20 years ago. Speaking of anniversaries, real quick, it's the 30th for A Man Called E.
Oh, really? Jeez.
Yeah. Do you still feel like, do you feel any connection to songs once they get past a certain age? Like something, well, let's take that one. Do you still feel any connection to that record?
That one goes a little too far back for me, really. It's that's so long ago. And then I don't, it's probably not my favorite if I listen to it now, just because of the production on it, because the early 90s was really still the late 80s.
Sure.
And the 80s was not my favorite era for production, other than, Prince.
I didn't hear it like that. Fortunately, I guess. I don't know. Because, I mean, of course I'm going to hear it differently than you heard it. You're inside it.
Right. Yeah. I just remember making it,
Yeah. Any memories from the Tori Amos tour? And I'm asking specifically because just coincidentally, she's my guest on my WFPK show tonight. So,
oh, wow. Well, yeah. Please tell her I said hi. Long time no see. I have nothing but good things to say about that. It was an amazing experience for me, because that was my first ever tour, and the first time I'd ever performed live anywhere as a frontman in a band. Previous to that, I'd only been in Virginia as a drummer. And so, and I got signed to my first record deal that resulted in A Man Called Eve, the first album coming out, without ever performing live. There was no, I didn't do any shows for the label or anything. And so the label and management and everybody was very nervous. Like, we don't know if this guy, nobody expected me to be a good live performer. And so, the very first time I ever performed, there was a lot of dates on the Tori Amos tour. And I remember the first night, I think it was in Louisville, Kentucky, actually.
Right here?
I think so. Yeah.
What? Wow.
Yeah. And it went well, and then the whole tour went great. It went so good that, we were the opening act, and we would often get called back for an encore, which of course is a rare thing for an opening act. And Tori was great, and it was just a great experience.
Yeah, that's one of those, time traveling. If it's a thing, if it were a thing, however we want to say that, I'd probably drop in on that tour. I'd be one of those, like, two artists that I love so much, Yeah. You could just tour together again, make it easier for me. So,
well, tell her that.
I will. I'll put in the word for you.
I'm pretty sure I'm still opening.
It's a co-bill now. Come on, it's a co-bill.
See what she said.
Yeah, I'll sort of wrap up with that too, because this will all lead to a new tour, the 2022 tour that you've announced. Is this allowing you to, are you going to be paying as much attention to Earth to Dora? Is it sort of touring 2 albums?
Yeah, it's going to be tough, because now we got new songs that we're dying to play from 2 albums. So it's going to be hard to figure out the set list, but it'll be fun.
Well, I look forward to it. I always look forward to it. I love Extreme Witchcraft. I love Earth to Dora too. We didn't get to talk about, I didn't do an interview with you for that one. So I'll just throw in that compliment now as well. And we'll end this the same way that I just began it. I love what you do so much. Thank you.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. This was fun.
Yeah. Always great talking. We'll see you around. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Now let's back it up just a few years, 2018. That's when, Mr. Everett and I got on the phone to talk about the album that came out that year, The Deconstruction. We also got into the hiatus that preceded the record and its themes. Let's see, receiving the Freeman of London honors, his relationship with Steve Perry and John Hamm, and at that point, the 20th anniversary of Electroshock Blues, part 2 of Kyle Meredith with Eels.
How you doing?
I believe now I'm talking to a Freeman of London, from what I've just read on the internet. It seems like a very big honor.
It's true. Oddly enough, it's true. Nobody knows what that means in America, but it's the same thing as like the key to the city.
Oh, okay.
I try to impress like my British friends and rock stars. Like I said to Pete Townsend, "Are you a Freeman of the city of London?" And he said, "No, he's not." And the best he got was the key to the city of Philadelphia.
You've traded.
Like, I don't get it. Like, so I've nominated them to give this honor that they've bestowed upon me to this up and coming young talent, Pete Townsend. I'm here to help call attention to the newbies.
Yeah, we appreciate your service.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, though, a key to the city is not nothing. And you're talking about one of the, the greatest cities in the world right there, the biggest cities in the world. How does that come about? Like, did someone nominate you?
Yeah, somebody in the, government or whatever. I don't know how things work in England, but somebody nominated me. And, I'd never heard of it before. It's just something that came up on our last tour. And we looked it up, and everyone said, like, yeah, you should do this. It'll be fun. And it doesn't really do you much good. It's got all these ridiculous things about, like, if you're picked up by the police drunk, supposedly they don't put you in jail. They put you in a taxi home. I don't know if that's still true. That might be from the 1700s or something. And you can herd your flock of sheep across London Bridge. There's stuff like that. And I was hoping, like, it would come in handy when I'm going through customs, which is always a tough customs experience, the British customs. They're very, British. So I tried it once, and they weren't impressed. I said, by the way, I'm a Freeman of the city of London. And the lady was just rolled her eyes. But I did have some luck with it this last time I tried it just a few weeks ago, and I brought the Freeman tie and cufflinks that they recently presented to me at our show in London. I brought that with me into the customs, and they looked it up on the internet and everything, and they actually seemed sort of impressed. So I feel like it kind of helped me get through a little faster.
Somewhere in there, right? Yeah, we have. I'm sure, like any other mayor, our mayor probably does present keys to the city, but I know we have the Kentucky Colonels around here, where you could be nominated and become a colonel, and you could as well. And it's probably somewhat similar to the same thing. Like, I have friends that are colonels, but I don't know that it gets them any kind of discount.
I want to be a colonel. Who can nominate me? Because I just want everyone to have to call me Colonel Everett.
We can make that happen. I know people that can make that happen.
Make that happen, please.
Yeah, we'll do. Anything for E.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, let's get the music part of this too, because Eels have a new record with the Deconstruction. It's another beautiful record that I've really been enjoying around here. And I guess there's a bit of story to this one. Is that right? I mean, there was a definite 4-year kind of space in between, which meant something.
Yeah, I mean, I just got to the point where I was just, I hit a wall. Like normal people take vacations every once in a while, and I was going for 20, 25 years nonstop, and I just never took a break. And at some point, if your life is too one-sided, it catches up and lets it be known to you that something needs to stop or change. So I just got to that point where I realized, like, oh, I've been paying attention to one side of life only pretty much for too long.
And so the songs in the meantime, though, you didn't stop writing, obviously.
Mostly I did. I mean, my goal was to not work at all as much as possible, or if I did, for it to be work that I don't normally do. But I did give myself the luxury of, well, if I wake up one day and I'm so inspired, like I feel like I got to write and record a song 6 months before the next one would happen. And I never, for a long time during that 4-year break, I never thought like I'm making an album. I was just making songs here and there. And it wasn't until very late during that break that it started to rear its ugly head, and I realized there was an album forming.
It's a really good album. That first line, I mean, it's a hell of a line to start with. The deconstruction has begun, time for me to fall apart. I know.
I was just, I was just thinking about like what I was kind of going through by having that break, and I was, just looking at my life in the last 25 years. Like, what have I done wrong? What have I done right? What could I do more right? And I was thinking about how, like, what's underneath all the defenses we spend most of our lives building up. What's our core? And I was thinking it was maybe like an innocence that we all start out with. And I was just trying to tear everything down and get back to some of that.
I really enjoyed a line you wrote on the Eels website, which I guess is sort of what you said you put in place of the bio this time around, because you said, and there are times you have to tear something apart to find something beautiful inside. And it sounds like that's sort of what you're getting at right here.
Well, another way to capsulize it is you could say I feel like we should all strive to be more Mr. Rogers and less Donald Trump.
Absolutely. 100%. Well, that might then lead into another song that really caught my ear, because that was In Our Cathedral, which you also talked about. That sort of follows that line, doesn't it?
That one, to me, is about that we all have a place we can go to within ourselves. And all it really is the ability to make the choice to accept your reality, whatever it is, and decide to be happy with it.
Which is a little bit easier said than done these days if you
For sure.
If you've got any kind of news on whatsoever for any kind of media. I mean, I live sort of in an NPR world over here, but it's still inundation. Yeah,
it's hard. But, like I look at it like, every day, you turn on the news and it's just such a shit show. And then all you can do is, try to pitch in however you can in your way, and then look at the good things about whatever's going on in your life.
I'll bring up another interview I did last year. Since you've already name dropped one, I'll name drop two. But okay. I was talking with Guy Garvey from Elbow, and they had just released their record last year, and I found it very interesting that, while we were all experiencing the election madness, he had just fallen in love. And so what you have is this really interesting filter for how he saw the world at the time, because he was very much in his love bubble. I kind of wondered if you were going through something similar, because I don't know if I have the timeline right. I know you're you're a father, and I think you have a very young child, which would mean like while all this was going on, you might have been very hyper focused on something else, which seems to be a luxury actually to me.
First of all, that's not really on the same level as Pete Townsend name dropping, so I feel like I'm winning so far.
Absolutely.
I appreciate the effort. It's very cute. Maybe I hope your next one's going to be. I totally had that experience with like basically around the time Donald Trump became president, or it looked like he was maybe going to become president. Was when I found out that I was having my first child, and it's just it's this terrible. You're like, okay, welcome to Earth, little guy. Donald Trump is the president, and everything is complete.
But that's what I was thinking. I guess that would sort of affect the way. If you're going to be writing about kind of worldviews, that it would sort of not mask it. Mask it isn't the right word I'm going for here, but it would definitely maybe offer some escape if you needed it.
Yeah, I don't know. I try to stay positive about all this by thinking about how it's a cyclical, and history and everything goes off course for 8 years or so, and then it all has to be reversed. And it's daunting to think about how much work is ahead to repair all the damage that's being done. But, you got to try to stay positive.
There are a few little instrumentals on the record that I wondered if they're strategically placed, because it almost feels like, if you're thinking of it like a play. And it's sort of how I listen to it. I'll put it that way. I sort of listen to this in a way like a little play. And the instrumentals are when the curtain came in, and when it came back out, it was almost like every single time was a whole different scenario. Is that my own perception, or was there any kind of strategy in what was going on there?
I really like doing that kind of little instrumental vignette thing for many reasons. It's like sort of a palate cleanser sometimes. You need to shift gears between two certain songs, or it's just a bridge in the story sometimes. And the thing that I really like about it is with instrumental music versus music that has vocals, it's just pure feeling, because there can't be anything cerebral about music that doesn't have lyrics. So it can take, the listener like really just to their own place, and it can serve them, any way that they need it to serve them at that point. I mean, of course, it's also like such a, we're talking about such an antiquated concept here that I'm, really laboring hard over getting the flow, and like for me, it's really important, like how many seconds of silence is in between each song, and versus the reality. Then it comes out, and it's like, oh, most people aren't really like playing an album all the way through, But still something that I really feel strongly about making, even if nobody listens to it that way.
Well, it's certainly how I heard it. I mean, that's how I'm not 20, I'm 36, so I guess I'm still riding that line, but it's still an album world as far as I'm concerned. So I appreciate the time you put in. I really do. So I also like to kind of play around the big number anniversaries. I really enjoy that. It somehow works naturally with what's going on here, because Mickey Petralia, is that how you say the name? Petralia?
Mm-hmm.
I know it was part of the production for some of this. First time since Electroshock Blues, which just so happens to be on its 20th anniversary right now. Were you guys aware of that it was going to hit like that?
Wow, even stranger yesterday. I just got home from our 2-month tour, and yesterday I was pushing my son Archie through the neighborhood in a stroller, and just happened to run into Mickey, who was sitting in traffic at a traffic light, and pulled over, and we caught up for a while. It's the first time I've seen him in like a year. I had no idea that there was an anniversary.
Yeah, so it just
we would have celebrated yesterday had we known.
Well, there you go. I mean, that was such a great record in itself, and from what I always knew about it, it was written during a dark time, and I don't know if you go back and listen, but I sort of am curious, if you, does that still affect how you hear a record like that, even one so long ago, about what was going on during that time?
I had to listen to it once a couple years ago when they put out a DreamWorks box set of vinyl that had all been remastered, and I had to approve the mastering, so I did have to sit down and listen to it, and that's always a weird experience, and very often I'm just have a hard time listening to old stuff, because I'm just like disappointed about thinking about all the stuff that I could have done differently, and the usual tortured artist stuff. But I was kind of struck by it was painful to listen to a lot of it because of the subject matter, but I was also kind of struck by how much I liked a lot of it too. I really liked the rawness and the homemade feel, and how it was all just sort of stitched together in a weird way.
And some good guest appearances on there. I mean, what? T-Bone Burnett, Lisa Germano, John Bryan, Grantley Phillips.
It was, the thing I did with T-Bone and John Bryan on one song was this is a very crafty idea that other artists should consider as a way to get free producers. So like I produced a song called Climbing to the Moon, and I invited T-Bone to play bass on it and John Bryan to play organ on it, and then you just sit back and watch them. They can't stop themselves. They just start producing. But you're not paying them $1 million. You're paying them a session fee to play an instrument. Very smart.
Listening to it again recently kind of made me like I'm really all for creating new sounds and artist exploration, but there's one sort of thing from that era that I miss these days that no one really tackles anymore, and that was that upright bass jazz thing that everyone sort of incorporated around that time. John Bryan was doing it with a lot of people, but and I know it was in at least a couple spots, I think, during this album too. And I don't know where that came from. Like, do you have any sense of why that was such an interesting, popular sound at the time?
I don't remember being conscious that it was a thing. That was a phenomenon. I don't really remember that. Who was doing it?
Oh, that was like Fiona Apple's first record was just filled with it, and it just seemed like everybody there was a trip hop thing going on, and everyone was sort of putting these little jazz inflections in some of their songs, and I think a lot of it came down to that upright bass, the sound that gives. Dodie was doing it, of course, a lot with soul coughing, and
right.
Yeah, it just seemed to be everywhere.
Well, luckily it didn't really catch on.
Not a fan here, I see. Not sharing in my love and experience.
No, I love upright bass, but just the way you're describing it is like a alternative rock.
Yes.
Match up with it with jazz sounds like a bad idea.
It's exactly what it was, but and maybe it was a time and place for me. It really set right with me at the time, and I don't know, I got good memories of that one. Anyway, another one I wanted to bring up too, as far as the big anniversaries. Broken Toy Shop's 25 this year. I think it's out of print. Does any of that early stuff ever get the re-release treatment? Do you look back on that and say, let's put it out there again?
I don't. It might still be in print for all I know, but it's when the Eels came out, those two E records got reissued. They're it was a different company, and so they're like, yeah, let's cash in on this. That's how it works. But that was that record was so completely unknown and buried. They put it out in December of I think 1993, and it just quickly died. And then I got dropped from the label, and that was into that. So that's a very obscure record.
It's too bad. It really is too bad.
I don't know. Probably rightly so. I'm sure it doesn't hold up. I don't recommend it.
I haven't heard it in a long time. I will freely admit I don't quite remember what's on it, but I'm a fan, so
I don't either, and I kind of want to keep it that way.
Fair enough. Compliments, by the way. It was kind of fun turning on the old Netflix box. We watched all of Love, seeing you pop in and out of there. Good experience for you?
Oh, it was a great experience. That was super fun.
Yeah.
And it was half fun and half terrifying because I'm not an actor, but I got so lucky to be able to do it with all these really great actors that were giving me tips and helping me learn. Yeah. To be able to act with Gillian Jacobs, who's just such a good actor, and she's teaching me. It's fantastic.
So you've got the lessons learned now. I mean, you want to do more of that? Is there any kind of aspiration to try to go further down that path?
I mean, I would if it was something that felt like a good fit. I mean, that one wasn't that big a stretch. I was basically playing an even more pretentious version of myself, just, a pretentious hipster Silver Lake musician. So I don't know what other kind of parts, I might be good for. Probably, criminals.
Well, while we're, sort of in the Hollywood land there too, I'll ask this one directly. Is John Hamm an Eels groupie? Is that what's going on here?
Well, I wouldn't call him a groupie because that would speak of, there was some sort of sexual thing or something going on. And while I do find him an extremely handsome man, it hasn't gone that far.
So just a fan.
Well, yeah, it turns out that I think he's been coming since before the Eels days. I think he might be one of the only guys that has Broken Toy Shop.
I know he's a big fan. I have no John Hamm story. I stood next to him while watching My Morning Jacket at Bonnaroo once, but that's about it.
That's a great John Hamm story.
He stood there with his chin out because he has a pronounced chin. Like he was analyzing every song, and Galifianakis was right in front of him, singing every single word to every song. So it turns out Zach's a MMJ superfan. I wasn't aware of that either.
Yeah, who knew?
Who knew? By default, you've also sort of become the expert on where is Steve Perry these days. I don't know if you know where Steve Perry is these days, but we're hoping you might have an update on if we're going to hear more from Steve Perry in the future.
I don't know. You know, we have stayed in touch, but he's been a little bit elusive lately. I don't know what is going on with him. And, you know, he moves in mysterious ways.
It's got to be sort of an interesting, unexpected part of your career, though. I mean, you can be associated with anyone because it's ultimately a small industry after you've been in it for a while. But I don't know. That one seems like it would be a bit more peculiar to me, at least.
That was a real curveball, and it was a good lesson for me though, because when I grew up in Virginia and Journey was on the radio all the time, I always hated it. I was not into it. It just wasn't my cup of tea. And so when he became unexpectedly a part of my life, I was always sort of fighting it. And the good lesson in it for me was now I love Journey. You know, as a result of knowing Steve and the experiences we've had, and then playing the songs with him, now it's, you know, when it comes on the radio, I turn it up. So you just never know, you know. It's a nice thing, I think, about getting older too. Like some of your rough edges soften, and you start to see, like, oh, why was I being so difficult about that? There's no need. Let some of the love in.
I'll tell you, having a kid changes things quite a bit as well, because never ever would I expect to put on Starship. But once he's now 10, a couple years ago, at 8 years old, he falls in love with We Built This City and all of that stuff. And I went through the same thing. It was like, you know what? That's really fun.
Is it going to get that bad for me? This is bad news.
No, it's absolutely.
I'm going to have to build this city on rock and roll.
You'll be knee deep in that hoopla, as they say.
Oh, man.
Don't fight it, E.
You've taken the lesson that I just gave as an example and taken it to a ridiculous extreme.
Well, I'm going to end it here with, you started out with Pete Townsend. I didn't win with Guy Garvey, but I have had Robert Plant on my show this year, and I did dance with Bono at a sound check. So hopefully that's...
Okay, you win. I can't compete with dancing with Bono.
But I'm going to tell you something. The Who is top 5 all-time favorite bands, and I've never, ever, ever met any of them. So...
Oh, well, let's call it a draw then.
Let's call it a draw. This was a lot of fun, E. I really appreciate this. A big congratulations. It's great to have you back on the Deconstruction. I love what you do, and I hope you just keep on doing it.
Oh, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.
All right. Take care out there, and we'll see you around.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
And again, my thanks to E. The new album is called Extreme Witchcraft. Highly recommended. Thanks to you as well for checking out the entire episode. Look at that. You made it here. You made it to the end. You're a fan. You should hit that subscribe button. Because... why? Because we put out 3 new interviews every single week. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Acast, Podchaser, NPR, YouTube for the video versions. I'm really going to have to come up with a melody and make that a song sometime. A jingle, if you will. Hit that subscribe button. After that, head over to WFPK.org, where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. An hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots. That's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all 3 of them, at Kyle Meredith. I do hope you like and follow along. And that does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time. Consequence Podcast Network.
Good to talk to you again.
It's easy to hear your favorite artist on WFPK from wherever you are. Listen on your smart speaker, live stream from our website at WFPK.org, from Louisville Public Media.